Let's talk about some core design principles of Grit. Grit is based off of simplicity within its cards, but complexity within the interactions between those cards. So here in front of you, I've got 6 characters. Each of them have their own class. So we have Cammy from the guild, we've got Melody from the good guys, Vincent from the good guys, Rush from the good guys, Lee's from the guild, and Reginald's from the guild. And you can see a vast difference in their abilities, obviously. They play very differently from each other, and they have a completely different archetype, but they are sort of core to their characters as well as their colors and their classes. But there is one thing that they all do share, and that is a stat line. All angry characters have the same stat of 3 attack, 4 hand size, 3 armor, but we're not going to talk about armor because that's across all characters. Lee has the same thing. Reginald is an experienced character with 2 attack, 4 hand size, the same with Vincent. And finally, Melody is a friendly hero with 0 attack, 7 hand size, the same as Cammy. And this is a core design principle of Grit. There is a lot of complexity that can happen within the cards themselves, specifically just from their abilities. Now, if we tack on different numbers within their stat lines, you're getting even more complexity because when you sit down at a game, you have to not only know your own, which is relatively easy, but you have to know your opponents as well. And remembering that is not so easy. There was a time in Grit where we had different armor values. So friendly heroes had 1, experienced heroes had 4, and angry heroes had 3, and then all the other classes got lumped in somewhere else. And that was, although more thematic maybe to the positions that each of these classes wanted to be in, it was so much harder to play from turn to turn because you had to remember what's their value, what are the modifiers that are happening from other cards, what damage do I have to hit, how much damage can I do, and it created complexity with even trying to play cards. It didn't come from the complexity of playing those cards. So that was streamlined, and a while ago, these attack and hand values were also streamlined. And that's because Grit is, once again, designed for simplicity, but for complexity within the interactions of cards. So what does that mean moving forward? Well, if a character is too strong, for example, their ability, like Reginald says that they can draw a card every time you play a guild card, well, that's incredibly powerful, but he's hopefully got the stats to match that. So one of the things that we want to do is that we want to make it so every class has a very specific identity, and that comes down to more or less the cards and how they play, not their stats. However, the stats are kind of a portion that you almost are expecting when you play a new hero. For example, if you are always playing Melody, Vincent, and Rush, you have a very specific playstyle, right? You are playing the good guys, you have that archetype, but when you move over to trying, you're like, okay, I want to try the guild now, and I like these colors and I like what they do, so I'm going to do the same thing in the guild. Not only do you have to learn their abilities and their cards, but you, in another world, you might have had to learn also the different things they can do with their stats. So what does that mean? Essentially, it means that when you start to transition to other characters, you have some semblance of familiarity with them because you don't have to relearn their stats. You already know, well, this is red, therefore this is a 3 attack and 4 hand size. And that takes a very little bit off of the complexity of learning the game, right? Like that's just what it does. So that's what we want to do with this core design of these, these uniform stat lines. What that means going forward, I wouldn't expect any of these stat lines to change ever. However, there is one caveat to that. I think that within abilities, you can have some sort of change in that. For example, let's take a look at Vincent. Vincent has 2 modes. This is a playtest card. So Vincent has 2 modes. The first mode is his charming side, where he can choose opponent, like if in a card you play says opponent chooses 1 or something like that, he gets to choose that. And then he's got his other side, which is Vincent gets +1 attack. So we kept the streamline of the stats, but we still have the freedom to change that when we start to talk about abilities. Now that Vincent is stronger, he's able to actually attack into all the other heroes because he's got that magical number 3. So even still, just because the stats are the same, it doesn't mean that they can't be changed and worked with throughout. For example, maybe a character draws a bunch of cards when they enter and then discards them or something, changing their hand size in some way. So this is all for simplicity's sake. And I think as we go forward and we start to talk about other core principles of grit, that simplicity theme is going to come back time and time again. Because this game was born of, I'm tired of reading so much text on cards. Like I personally, I just find it so draining. And even still, I think that Reginald and Cammy, and to an extent Vincent, they have too much text on them that isn't pieced up super well. And what we really want to do is make it so when someone sits down, they're going to have a lot to look at. You have a full hand of cards, you've got 3 heroes, you've got an armory deck, you've got the other heroes on the other side. And we want to make sure that that doesn't feel as overwhelming as it can, to the best of our ability. So continuing with game balancing, I think that'll also see its kind of head poke into whenever we start to balance anything. If you've watched any of the live balancing from gosh, it's called Broken or Balanced, with the bad guys we're doing right now. I think that in some of those you might even hear, we will hear actually, that we don't want to put an ability or change an ability because it'll get too much text that way. So how do we reduce the amount of text but still maintain a thematic ability in that way? So I mean, that's getting onto a different subject entirely, but that's the point. That's a core design principle of Grit, is these uniform numbers, which may not seem like much, but if they were to change and do all sorts of stuff, I think it would be a much harder game to learn. So thank you so much for watching, wherever you are in the world. I hope that you have a great day, night, morning, weekend, whatever, and I hope to see you in whatever the next video is. So, see ya.